Hello and welcome to this new tutorial. We are going to create this piece out of those two references. Project file together with all assets will be included in the description. So let's dive in. I am going to import both references in the front view, add a background image, and adjust the size and the depth, and set opacity. Same for animation reference. First, octopus modeling. For the head and eyes, it's a couple of spheres. Increase segments and rings to make it smoother. Transformation to get it in the right shape and position. For the mouth, I will use a box first and not sculpt it, since I want a full control of the animation later. In the edit mode, going to add some loop cuts and edit the vertices with the X-ray toggle on. Move it to the right location. Add subdivision modifier to smooth things out. Another loop cut on the side to make it more boxy. Subdivision modifiers for the head. And then subtract it from the head with a Boolean modifier so that whenever I modify it or move it, it will affect its place in the face. More spheres for the eyes. A box with some extrusion for the teeth. Teeth transformation to get it in a right place with a small bevel in between. Now extrude those faces in and finally add a bevel modifier. For the cap, it's going to be half a UV sphere and half a cylinder. So first, half a sphere, and then add a cylinder and delete half of its vertices. Edit it in the edit mode to kinda get the general shape. Add some loop cuts, modifying with proportional editing to get the right shape. Solidify and subdivision modifiers for both. And leave it there for now. For the trims, it's a cylinders with small extrusions when needed. Back to the cap, I want to set up a simple bendy bone rig to be ready for the animation later. Notice that I always have the animation set up in mind to keep things easy and organized. First, add a single bone, scale it down and extrude to get another two. Change the display as to bendy bone. Increase the segments for the middle bone and the display size for all, holding Alt while change for multiple bones. Clear parent for the last bone. Add a stretch to constraint to the middle bone and choose the armature and the bone to stretch to. Then set a start handle and end one with absolute option selected. And set the cap cylinder as a child to the armature with automatic weights. And the cap is ready. Now for the octopus tentacle. I will use a path curve and edit it to kinda match the reference. Increase the depth to get some volume and continue editing. Convert it to mesh. Edit again to get the right shape. A subdivision modifier. Now add a single bone to match the size of the tentacle. I will move the origin to the front of the tentacle. And snap the bone head to it to exactly match the mesh size. And subdivide it to a good amount, 40 for example, and make the bones to always in front. Now add another path curve to also match the mesh. Now for the magic. Select the last bone in pose mode and add a spline IK constraint. Choose the curve. Then increase the chain length to be 41. Notice it's same as segments number increased by 1. Now the curve can control the armature. Now parenting the mesh to the armature with automatic weights, and we are done. Now we can totally control it from the curve. Now in the edit mode, I will set a vertex group for later. Select the down face loops and add a vertex group and hit assign. Now you can select those easily when needed. Now if I copy and paste the tentacle mesh in the outliner, it will duplicate the whole thing, armature and curve controller. So I'll do this step 8 times since the octopus got 8 of them. For the drumstick, a sphere and a cylinder would be enough. Now for the starfish, I will use a cylinder with vertices of 5. Extrude every face in the sides and scale it down. Then move them to the front to make it look like it's stuck on something. Subdivide level 4 and refine and add a vertex group for later. Now for the leaves, I will use a plane and transform it to match the reference. In the edit mode, some loop cuts and modify it. Add subdivision modifier and refine again. Add a solidify now, a loop cut in the middle, then select the outer edges and hit E. Select those faces and make a vertex group out of them. Same goes for every other leaf. Use some knife tool when needed and all set. Couple of UV spheres for those. Boxes with some extrusion and Boolean objects to make a proper sandcastle. A large plane for the ground. Then for the camera setup, and organize everything again. Enable depth of field, add an empty object, and call it focus, for example, and set it as focus object in the depth of field options. Now for the ground, going to modify it with proportional editing on, a subdivision modifier, then displace next. Add a new texture and choose Voronoi one. Play with the size, then the strength of displace. Apply both modifiers and now another displace modifier and choose a sand texture height map for it. Play with the strength until it's perfect for you. A large plane for background and a duplicate of the ground with some editing to make the small mountain in the background. Now for lighting setup, going to use 4 main lights. First, sunlight with the good settings, a strength of 2 and warmer tone. Rotate it a little and move it wherever you see right. A second, area light to the left, with a bluish tone and power of 100. Increase the scale to cover more area. Now third, another area light to the right, and going to use the same one and change color to a warmer tone. Now a fourth one, also area, in front of all things, directed on the sea fish and front leaves, since all lights are behind them, to give those some light. And I'll choose a pink one. For the shading now, I've already appended the clay shader from our Clayish Creatures tutorial, which you can find and watch in the channel. And I will start with the ground. In addition of the clay shader, I will use a gradient color. And link it to the base color. Ctrl T to add a mapping node, and we'll add RGB curves to manipulate the color and make it a little darker. To make a sand waves lock on the ground. For this, I will use wave texture first, link it to bump node, to height, duplicate it, and link both to mix shader node. Connect bump to mix again, float instead of vector, and now connect this whole thing with clay bump. Now connect all to normal map and then to principled BSDF normal input. Nothing is happening, we have to connect the mix with color. Now change some values. And sorry, replace this wave texture to a noise one. Edit some values. Reduce the normal map node strength, and here we go. Ctrl T to add a mapping node, and play with values till you're satisfied. Now for the tentacle, Smart UV project. Then a basic material with texture image. And now for texture paint. Remember the vertex group I told you to keep? Now it's time. Select it and go to texture paint. Apply a proper gradient to all tentacle. Then activate the paint mask to apply another gradient only to the selected vertex group. Add some yellow brushes now. And most importantly, save your image to not lose it and to use it as a base color for the clay texture later. Now to add the clay shader, apply a clay material, duplicate and rename, and change the base color to image texture, then choose what you have just saved. Now apply things to all tentacles. First, Smart UV project. Second, apply the same material you have just created. Since it's the same mesh, then all will be perfect. Same technique with the head. Now to get the blacks for the mouth, here's a little trick. Apply a black clay to the Boolean object and call it mouth, for example. Now for the head, add the mouth material and Blender will automatically apply it to the subtraction only, in our case, the mouth only. Basic color materials for every other thing. Now for another cool trick. To get the exact cool illustration on the biggest drum, I'll use a texture brush with a same image. Select the brush, then in Textures, add a new. Choose the image, change the color to white, set the fall off to constant, and you are good to go. Continue with the same techniques of basic colors or texture paints. And remember to always save your images after each texture paint. Same thing goes for the starfish. Now for a fifth cool spotlight for the Costex. A very simple trick, yet so beautiful. Add the spotlight, increase strength with a high amount, and in the shader editor, click Use Nodes, add image texture, and choose any Costex texture of your choice. And link it and you all set. And you can use a texture coordinate so that you can animate the caustics by positioning, scaling, rotation, and so on. Now for the animation. We will use a free add-on called Keymesh. It's too simple and very handy when it comes to animate frame by frame inside of Blender. You need to select the object, in our case here, it's the controller curve, click Insert, and a keyframe will be added. Now edit it to match the reference. And after finishing, go back to Object Mode and insert another. Edit Mode to edit it, and that's it. So first, select the object in the Object Mode, insert a keyframe, edit the object in the Edit Mode to kinda match the reference, select again by going back to Object Mode, insert another keyframe, and so on. Here's a first tentacle, second, third, drumstick, fourth, fifth leg. Now for the cap. I will use normal frames for position, rotation, and scale, and a Keymesh frames to the deform in the edit mode. And for the cap front part, normal frames for the bones in pose mode. A very important reminder, always check your animation from all of the angles, since you are working in a complete 3D space with X, Y, and Z, and not only XY 2D scene. So, normal frames for transformations and Keymesh frames for deformations. And just like that, cap, drums, and finally head and eyes. And all set, and we are good to go. Hope you find it joyful and enlightening. See you in the next one.